hopefully I can get my voice in line and keep it there.
You got to do those vocal exercises, man.
Me. All
La
right.
la la la
Uh,
la la la.
all right, here we go. Are we witnessing the end of the film industry as we know it? Are we destined to watch a feature length film of Will Smith eating spaghetti like a monster? Has Skynet become self aware? We're going to talk about it. Welcome to the cast, Backstage and Banter. I'm your host, Jason Saris, and with me, as always, is Morgan Elgarden. Morgan, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. That was dark. That was pretty dark opening.
It's all doom and gloom these days, man. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. AI is coming and taking over. Apparently, we got to sound the
Already,
alarm early.
it's not coming. It is here and it is
That is true.
staying. I see so many people in the comments whenever I see an AI video. Everyone has sort of resigned themselves to the fact that AI is here and it's not going anywhere. And perhaps there's truth to that, but I think that we have a bigger capacity to push back than we perhaps want to acknowledge or wield.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we're going to talk about a lot of those things today. This is episode 2 of season 1 of the show. And I'd like to call this episode Lights, Camera, Algorithm because that's what it's about. It's about
Ooh.
AI and it's about its take on the film industry and kind of how it's changing things and, how the landscape will have to adapt or not adapt and fold. So I think there's some good discussion in there and hopefully you're up for the task.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Lights, camera, algorithm. We should
Yeah, isn't that
have
cool?
we should have like a funky thing like that for every episode. That might be ambitious. But that's I like that. That's fun.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about AI and the film industry. And I think a good place to start, actually, because everyone knows now that people talk about AI, and I do want to try to keep it focused on AI in the film industry because I think we can go on a whole other tangent about how AI affects everything else in life.
Oh, for sure.
So rather than us have a 10-hour episode here,
Big topic.
I want to focus on industry, the film industry specifically. But I think in order to kind of understand where it's going, I want to look back a little bit at the history of film industry because this is not the first time that people kind of had panic over changes that have happened. And I think talking about those kind of sets the stage well for maybe what's to come. So,
Sure. I love history. Me be
yeah.
a history buff.
So as film has been around for a while now, but before it was what we know it today, it started, there was the kaleidoscope type of thing, that little spinny merry-go-round type thing. It has like
Yep.
images and it
The
basically,
predecessor of the flip book.
yes. And it basically kind of created the illusion of movement. And, a big change from
Well,
that.
I don't know about illusion. Because that's essentially what a motion picture is. Like, let's not make it out to be something that it isn't. Like, we believe that these pictures are moving, but like anyone who's into the tech of filmmaking knows that there's frames per second, FPS,
Sure.
which varies depending on the project that you do and also varies depending on if it's live action versus animation. But that concept of the, I forget what they're called, the rotos, whatever those things are called. That's exactly what's happening with the camera. Literally, it's like 60 frames per second. Literally means 60 images are being shown to you every second and creates the illusion of motion. So
Yeah, I
same
think
same
that
concept.
it's a very similar concept. You're absolutely right, but I think historically, when you look back, they don't consider that the first motion picture because
No,
they consider it more of a predecessor to motion picture because of the fact
this
that
is
it's kind
true.
of bound to the circular merry-go-round
It's a
device. I
loop.
don't know the
Yeah,
tech,
it's
so you kind of get very limited. There's a lot of limitations of what you can do with it. But obviously, at some point, they had to transition away from that to literal motion picture. And I think that was probably not something that people looked at the time and said, "Oh my God, it's going to put all the kaleidoscope makers out of business." Right? I don't think people saw it that way. I mean, maybe there was a few that were worried about it, but I think that people probably looked at it as like an evolution of the medium.
sure. Sure, sure.
So, we have this motion picture, and at first there was no audio to it, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it was just kind of silent video, and then we get to a point where now that there's audio. Prior to that, you had your stars like a Charlie Chaplin or a Buster Keaton, which had to do a lot of acting with their
Mhm.
faces and their mannerisms and their body movement. And then you add audio, and it adds a whole nother dynamic. And I think that this is probably the first time that people could go, well, what happens to all these people that were really good at this one thing? Can they move on to this
Actually,
other thing?
I have a very interesting story regarding that specific change in the industry, and I feel it's very apropos since the whole overarching question is, will AI put people out of work,
Sure.
right? So I was in acting class. This was back when I was in New York, and I was studying with an individual who is also very keen on history, particularly film history and entertainment history, and he has like this in-depth knowledge of how things evolved. And one of the things in the industry that is not a secret is producers are always looking for the cheapest way to make a good project.
Of course.
Now, as your reputation in the industry grows, you are able to command um, you're able to leverage that title, that position, that experience for bigger wages. When the shift of silent films to what at the time were called talkies
Yep. The
happened,
talkies.
there were a number of like A-list celebrity performers who were sort of your go-to people for um silent films, and then there was essentially a marketing campaign, I guess I would call it, where they were hiring all of these new actors to be in the talkies. And the reason that was sort of given to the public is, well, now that there's audio, some of our silent film actors don't meet the criteria for the medium, so we're giving these new actors a shot. That was entirely bogus. They said that to justify to the public why they were hiring new actors, and they wanted to hire new actors so they could pay them less.
Interesting. Now,
Yeah,
I don't doubt that that's true. I also believe that there are probably some actors from the silent era that also just couldn't make the jump. I think that physical
hard to
acting
know.
and vocal acting could differ with people. I mean, there are some people that could be a very illustrative, bombastic physical actor, and maybe when you now have to add tone and depth, or maybe, I mean, some people just don't have a voice that matches their look. So I can see
Mm,
that some people would get left behind just organically too. But the point of all this is that this was probably the first time where the tool did leave some people behind. But I still don't think that there was a. I don't believe that it warranted public outcry of like we shouldn't do this. Like it was still a new kind of endeavor, and I think people were generally excited about it. And I think that aside from those that are getting the raw end of the deal, like in that story you mentioned, there is still potential that somebody could come along with them for the journey, right? Even if that meant at a pay cut or something, that it's
sure.
still a possibility. Fast forward again, I mean, we now have VFX start to replace practical effects. We've
Hmm.
seen animation kind of take leaps where it replaces physical people on set. We've
Hmm.
seen CGI, which replaces entire characters or background actors, motion capture stuff. These are all things that I think at the time are mostly exciting. Now, I will say, and I don't know if you would remember this, you might be too young. When Titanic came out, James Cameron's movie, do you
Me not.
recall that it being like a big news story that they were making fully digital background actors for scenes in that movie?
So Titanic is one that I don't know all of, because look, Titanic changed a lot. Titanic is a monumental film for a lot of different reasons.
Sure.
Um, so I know some behind the scenes stories, like James Cameron routinely got into arguments with historians about certain things. One of his most famous arguments is he added light fixtures that didn't exist on the original Titanic because he needed more light in a scene. Um, so he would fight for this lighting, and the historian would be like, well, but that's not accurate to the time, and they'd have to come up with some compromise about like, okay, well, we can add light fixtures here and it would kind of make sense, and they'd have to look like this in order for it to be period specific. But I don't know, like Neil deGrasse Tyson also has a whole thing about how the sky is wrong.
Yeah, and he changed it because of Neil deGrasse Tyson's comments about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't remember that specifically. Titanic also like a little bit predates me. I think it came out in 96, right? If I 96 or
Somewhere
98.
about there, yeah.
And I was born in 94. So not old enough to really be in the dredges of all of that.
Yeah, I figured it was probably a little bit before your time, but I do recall. I mean, I was young at the time, but I do recall the news playing stories about how will this eliminate actors because now we have a movie where I remember a specific scene where if you've seen the movie, as towards the end, spoiler alert, the Titanic hits an iceberg, and the
Oh, no way.
way
Whoa. That's
as
crazy,
the
dude.
ship starts to break in half and it's falling, there's a lot of like background people that you just see kind of scrambling or trying to hold on to stuff, and they were digitally created. And now we don't think much of that. I mean, there's lots of movies that have just an abundance of people in an audience or in the background, and a lot of them are digitally created because it's just so impractical to have that many people on set. And even sets now are often not the entire size of what they portray on a film. So at the
I
time there was
do
a big deal about like, oh, what is this going to mean for the industry?
yeah.
And I feel
I
like
do
that's probably the
wonder
most one-to-one comparison to what we're facing with AI now. This is like the first like, oh my
um
god, is this the sky falling?
I don't know. I do wonder how much of that impacted, I guess, like people's ability to get work, because that's the central question, right? And there
Yeah.
is a lot of behind the scenes footage that you can see of the filming of Titanic, and there are quite a number of those scenes where they do have legitimate people, actual background extras, whatever you want to call them,
Sure.
and you do see shots, and they had this massive blow up mattress that people would be able to slide down the ship onto safely. So I don't know how much of that actually like impacted people's ability to get work. That would definitely be an interesting case study. What I will say is a lot of these leaps forward, as they're sort of denoted, they are a step towards or striving to make a piece more real. Like that's always the baseline drive, is how do we make this mimic life a little bit more accurately? And there's always the dramatization argument of we want it to pull from life, but we don't necessarily want it to be exactly life. Like it mirrors life, but it's not life. But also to that end, you want it to be realistic. You want people to believe that they are part of a story, part of a real story that could
Yeah.
actually happen. So
It's
all of
about the
these moves, I
immersion.
think, are
Yeah.
just yeah.
It's got to
So
be
all of these
relatable and it has to
things
be immersive for sure.
right. So we talk about the emergence of talkies. That makes it more real in the sense that when we walk around every day, we hear things, we hear people talking, we converse with other people. When you talk about the emergence of CGI replacing practicals, that one gets a little bit trickier because I think that initially CGI was to sort of smooth out what practicals couldn't quite do perfectly. Um, you see a lot like bad movies that have like the UFO on a string and you can see the string. So
Yeah.
CGI is like to remove the string or to make it look a little bit more lifelike so it doesn't look like a
Or
painted model.
even like a movie like Jurassic Park. I mean that's the first movie
Yeah,
that I think of where you know that there's a lot of CGI in there, but you don't see it because it's blending
right.
reality with what the camera just can't capture in real
Right.
life. And it's done beautifully. And I feel like all of these things that we're talking about, all these jumps forward, all these different things, the ones that I feel like have been generally accepted up until this point have been tools. And sometimes it's hard to see them as tools when they first come out, right? Because you think, well, this is a huge shift. And it seems uncomfortable, or it seems scary, or it seems like it is the end of something that we know. But then you start to see how they're applied, and if the vision is still there to create a great storytelling experience, to really pull from human experience and how to enrich that, then those can be used to make that story better. And that's what I think is the key to any sort of jump in
Sure.
filmmaking, is when it's a tool and not just how do we replace what's there. And we're going to get more onto the replacement aspect of it, but before we do that, I want to ask you,
I'm
because this
ready.
is the question that comes up with AI. Do you see good things that can come from AI?
As a broad sweeping stroke, I will reluctantly say yes. I
Okay.
do think that there are good things that can come of AI, but I'm going to put a huge asterisk next to that and sort of ditto what you said before, which is it depends on how you're leveraging the tool. So, the point that I was making before about these leaps forward in technology were to enhance the realism of a project. AI is distinctly different because the leveraging of the tool, isn't actually necessarily to make something more realistic. It is literally to replace workforce. So I put a huge asterisk next to that because yes, there are ways to leverage the tool, but the I mean like the large swathing question nowadays is there an ethical way to leverage the tool? Like that's the question.
So unfortunately, I think whether you like it or not, AI is going to be entering the film world, right?
Yes.
So if we were to say it's coming, it will. There's no way to stop it. I mean, it's here. To your point earlier, how can film studios, or how do they incorporate it now, where there is only positives from it? Like, what are some good uses for it? And we'll get to the negatives afterward. But I want to start and put our hat on to say, like, as a filmmaker, I
Mhm.
want to use AI. How can I use this to make my project better without
Yeah.
it being the end of the art form?
So I have a plethora of thoughts on this, but none of it is original. All of it draws from other, more distinguished and established artists than I. I've heard a number of directors talk about implementing this in the post production process to slash the time frame of post production. So, picture you're working on any project, whether it's animation, live action, any project nowadays has some level of CGI that goes into it. And with that, requires CGI artists, people who can um, I don't know all the technical terms, but like rotoscoping is one of it, modeling is one of it. There's also like rigging is part of it. So, some of these are more specific to animation as opposed to live action, although we can have a whole discussion about how live action is not actually live action nowadays, but that's separate. So these directors that I've listened to talk about how with the aid of AI, I mean, like, unfortunately, you will require a smaller workforce, but you'll also be able to do things a lot faster. So, what would have typically taken, say, 2 weeks to do, whether that's doing like an opening animation sequence or a like cool landing of Superman into the hero pose shot, like these things that would have traditionally taken 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you could now maybe do in less than a week.
Yep.
And that's tremendous. Not only does that help with workflow and also help relieve stress off of overworked people, but you'd also be able to cut costs on the production side of it. And I think that being able to cut costs, especially in today's climate where there's so many people out of work because the industry was just overspending on everything. I think being able to cut costs might actually enable them to hire more people, which would be a net positive.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. I think that there are also things, even when you kind of simplify it even more, just to kind of streamline processes in general, which I think is what you're talking about. But even when you're looking at other things that you don't typically associate with the filmmaking process that are still very real, like let's look at, let's say there's an old movie and you want to re-release it for a 20th anniversary, right? I mean,
Mm, yeah.
even like Jaws recently came back into the theaters for its anniversary, right? You have this movie that was filmed years and years, decades ago, and now it does not look up to modern standards. AI can help you upscale that, right? Increase the fidelity. I mean, like that's a very practical use for AI that does not take away from a current working person. I don't know how they would do that otherwise, but like to sit there and do upscaling, I think is one good example of how you can leverage AI for a positive, for a positive effect. Other
That's
ideas are like,
actually that's actually somewhat controversial, which I'm actually a little bit surprised by because we've been remastering stuff for a while now. Almost every single like Beatles song that you're going to hear on the internet or like on Spotify, for instance, is the remastered version. It's not the original version recorded in the 60s. It's a remastered version, which
sure.
I mean, these are older remasterings, so this is remasterings from like the 90s or the early 2000s, and you would obviously be able to do a better job remastering that stuff now, but there's an interesting case study from recently. I don't know if you're familiar, but there's this thing called the Globe, I think, in Las Vegas, which is this huge
Oh, the sphere.
the sphere or the dome or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
it's called.
The
Um,
globe. I like that name though. I mean,
yeah,
it works too.
I might be thinking of that because there's like there is a the Globe. It's the Shakespeare Globe in England, and I'm probably getting the two mixed up, just terminology. But anyway, so there's this dome or whatever it's called in Las Vegas, and recently they did a sort of remastered immersive experience of The Wizard of Oz. And this got
Mhm.
massive backlash because they used AI to fill out the rest. Because, you know, when Wizard of Oz came out, it was a 4 by 3 for like a small little TV. So
Yeah.
like there's all of this other like sky above you and like the stuff behind you that is not the original picture that they used AI to fill out so that when you're sitting in the dome, it's a full 3D experience. And this got massive backlash, but would essentially amount to a remastering of a project. So why did it get so much backlash?
I don't know. I would not have assumed that would. I know the project that you're talking about. It's something that looks very interesting to me. It like drops physical foam apples at you and it incorporates elements, and I think it's a very cool experience. And I think that people have a natural disdain for AI, for a lot of reasons. And I'm not saying it's justified or unjustified. Everybody's got their own reasons for it. But I think if I had to guess, and I don't know this to be the case, but if I had to guess, I would assume that people had a problem with that because you were making adjustments to what happens in the movie. Because I think that does not just play the original movie. I think there's additional footage that have been included in there outside of just the
Oh, maybe.
stretching the frame this way it takes up the shape of the dome inside. I think that it also includes elements this way it will make it immersive. Like when apples fall on you. I don't. It's been a while since I've seen it. I don't recall a spot that has a bunch of apples that are dropping from the sky. But if you're going to now include a scene that makes sense that they're going to put some kind of physical interactive element in with the
Mm,
audience, I can see a purist saying like, well, that's not the movie. That's the movie
sure.
plus
Yeah.
something that was never intended by the original, production. All those people, they spent, their time, energy, money, efforts to make something, and now you're tweaking it and changing what's there. So I can see a
And
purist having an issue with that. I personally don't. I think when you look at that, they're not selling it as come watch the Wizard of Oz. It is come see the a Wizard of Oz experience based on the movie.
sure.
And it's no
Yeah.
different than if you go to a, if your favorite music artist makes a cover song of, something that, another artist made, or samples a beat and turns it into their own thing. As long as the
Yeah.
the original creators are still getting their royalties, I don't personally see something wrong with that. And I think that's another good use case of how AI can take us to the next level, and you have a positive use for it. That also makes me think of, too, something like licensing a voice. Now, AI can already clone voices, and I don't think that that is a great thing that it can do, except for in cases where an actor licenses their voice out to continue being able to use it in perpetuity. And the example that comes to mind is James Earl Jones, who obviously was the voice of Darth Vader in Star Wars, which is a
Mm.
franchise that will be around probably forever. Whether the movies are good or bad, there was always an audience for a Star Wars project. And Darth Vader is iconic. And yeah, you could have somebody come in and try to replicate James Earl Jones's voice.
There you go.
That's hard to say when you say it often. But it's not going to be the same. So if James Earl Jones said, "Look, I'm old. I can't play this character forever. I give you the right to clone my voice, use it in future projects for this character. My estate gets paid after my passing, which he has now passed." I also don't think that's a problem. I think where it starts to get iffy is
Yeah.
when they start to use those when you could just ask the actor to do it. And I know that there's a lot of that happens when you go in for a project. They do like body scans and they do vocal cloning because they want to be able to use you for a cameo in a future movie, or they want to be able to, you know, uh, make adjustments without calling you back to set. And to have that in perpetuity is absurd unless you explicitly give that permission. And I think that that's where it starts to get a little bit muddy.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was so many things about AI that were fought about during the strike back in 22, and I have my own personal opinions that to some degree get political and or religious, because I think that in instances like essentially selling your voice and your image in perpetuity, it denigrates your life to a certain degree because now you're essentially immortal through this digital means. And this also comes back to the point that I was making before, which is that a reflection of real life? Does it make it more realistic? Because that person is no longer here with us. That person is no longer able to go to a booth and record a thing. So it is on its face entirely fabricated. And I have a lot of strong opinions about this
Which,
because that's wild.
yeah, and I think that that's fair, and I agree that people could have that take, and that's why I think that that is something that should be a choice of the actor. Like, I don't think that I hope we don't get to a point where studios are saying, "Look, if you want this role, you have to sign off on this piece," right? But I also see no problem with them saying like, "Hey, here's the role, it's yours. We're thinking this may be a long-term franchise. We would like to also extend this additional rider to it that says, we can get this element or whatever. Think about it. If you would like to have that, then, we'll give you this kicker or whatever." And then that's
Mhm.
a choice to the actor that says, "You know what? It would be nice to have the ongoing income whenever they need that footage or that vocal cloning or whatever." But you do have to weigh the option of like, I have no say in what the project is. What if whatever's happening changes the way that I would have played it or whatever? I mean, you take yourself out of that decision making process, right? And that's a choice that you either are okay with or you're not. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to it, but I don't have a problem with them asking the question. If they ask the question and the actor chooses based on what they feel is right for them, God bless them. The
Yeah.
problem, I think, is when it becomes some sort of requirement that the only way you get the work is if you were also willing to sign off on not getting the work later because they can just do it with AI.
So, right, but this is the conundrum that workers have. And this is why I think that there were people on very different sides of the argument during this strike that happened in 22, because on the one hand, you're right. Informed consent, right? Making sure that a person knows what they're signing before they sign it. And this was one of the topics that the union tried to fight for. Whether you think that they did that successfully or unsuccessfully is a different matter. They did fight for it. However, the other issue that compounds the problem is scabbers. So, not everyone is part of the union, and not every project has to be union. So, I think we take it a little bit for granted that major studios like Universal, Disney, A24 all use union actors, but they don't have to. There's no actual law that says that they must use union actors. And if they decide not to and they go non-union, the problem that you're going to have are there's going to be a handful of people who will do and sign anything. So what the production companies now are faced with is a choice. Do I do the ethical thing, hire a union actor, abide by all of the union rules, or do I just go get someone who's willing to sign the AI writer and give me a digital copy of themselves in perpetuity? And I guarantee you there are people who will do that.
For sure, especially new actors trying to, make it find their break, right? I mean, you have a lower standard when you're just trying to make it. So I'm sure you're right, and I'm sure that would be there. And this is we could probably go down a whole other road, and maybe we should in another episode. But I think what it comes down to is that audiences are more likely to buy a ticket to a movie that has an actor that they know, or like a certain like level of actor, which are usually the union actors. And when you have non-unionized actors, it removes them from their familiarity, which makes it a little bit, I mean, names sell tickets a lot of times, right? And it has been a shift over the last few years where now the big selling ticket is no longer the movie star. Sometimes it's the franchise or the IP. And if we continue heading down that road, I can very much see what you're talking about. But again, like that's like we should probably go through that in a whole nother episode because we can probably go down that for a while. Um,
Yeah. I will
but
say though, like stunt casting is a thing, and it certainly puts butts in chairs. But my I guess counter would be that uh, yes, I guess that that's a real person because we're familiar with that celebrity and that stunt casting happened because it gets butts in chairs. But I don't think that people are buying tickets because that's a person. I would actually push back on that point because there are experimental AI studios that are cropping up now, and some of them are good enough where unless you told the audience that this was an AI generated project, they don't know the difference. Like they
yeah,
cannot tell the difference. And that's kind of the problem.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in just a minute here, but just to kind of clarify my point, it used to be studios used to own a lot more of the process than they do now. And actors were basically contracted to work for a specific studio. So they would pump out movies where they would have, you know, Cary Grant as your, like the next Cary Grant movie, right? And
Hmm.
you would just sell all these Cary Grant movies and people would go see it because they liked Cary Grant.
Hmm.
We don't have as much of those now. We do still have some. I would say like Tom Cruise. Like Tom Cruise is still a star to the level that when Tom Cruise has a movie, people will go see it because it's Tom Cruise and they like Tom Cruise movies. I
Hmm.
think that you can make a case for other actors as well, but I feel like that is diminishing. And a lot of times now it's you go see the movie because you like the property or you like the idea of it, because those movies based on like a long-term contract with a studio don't exist anymore. Now actors can
Right.
go to multiple studios, but that used to be the studio had, their stable of directors, their stable of actors, and they just produced all kinds of films with those people, the same people over and over again, and you would get accustomed to seeing certain types of films with a certain type of actor, so that would draw you, whatever it was. I don't know what this movie's about, but so and so's in it, so I'll go see it. So it has
Right.
shifted a little bit, and that's what I mean there. But you're right, there are up and coming AI studios and that sort of thing. Again, we'll circle back to that in a minute. The last thing I just want to touch on real quick of where I think AI does help is I do think AI lowers the bar for entry to storytelling. So like, and good or bad, there's a lot of
Okay,
garbage out there,
Jason, we're
but
we're
I'm
about to
I'm
get into it. I have so many thoughts about this
okay.
lower bar, quote
I'm just saying,
unquote.
I'm just saying that if you look at it from the perspective, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
And if you're looking at it from the perspective of saying, how do we get more stories out to the world? AI does give people that are sitting at home in a basement somewhere that might have a really good story. I'm not saying they all do, but let's say somebody has really good a good story, not a lot of resources. Could they theoretically leverage AI to help them smooth out a script, to produce a scene, help build a storyboard? Of course. And these are things that if it did not exist would not be given to another person to work that because they have no startup money. So it just would not happen. That story would not get told.
Sure.
So theoretically, you could say that a positive is that it can make anybody with enough ambition have access to something that is a stepping stone towards a professional career.
Right. So here's my singular counter to that, and I have many, but this is the one that I will levy in this particular moment, which
Okay.
is 100 years ago, or maybe that's too far. 50 years ago, if a very ambitious young chap had a story they wanted to tell and didn't have access to AI, your argument is that that person back in the day would have had no avenues to pursue that goal.
My argument was that they may have had no avenues. There are
So,
people that have certainly figured out how to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, get it done, but I'm just saying it lowers the bar of like what extra work has to happen in order to get that story told.
right. So my counter argument would literally be I call BS, because if you are such a driven young filmmaker, it doesn't matter what tools you have at your disposal. You will leverage anything and everything that you have to make your story. And in my opinion, in my elitist opinion, I think that those are the only stories worth telling. Because if you're not willing to fight for your vision, then you don't deserve to tell it. Like, plain and simple. I'm very much a you get what you pay for in this world. And if you pay nothing, then you get nothing, my opinion. And we've sort of seen this come around to bite us in the butt, specifically with AI. So get in the comments. Come after me. I will defend this position with my literal life because I do think that if you don't put in the hard work, then why should I care about your project? So, could it lower the bar? Sure, it could, but all that will accomplish is crappier movies and TV shows being made.
Maybe, and that's certainly the case. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate to say, is it possible that the next greatest movie of all time, somebody that never thought that it would be possible for them can produce with some sort of assistance from AI? And I don't
Sure.
like to talk in, I don't like to talk in finalities. I don't like to be, there's always a chance that that could happen. So I'm just saying theoretically it's possible. But to your point, and I think this is a good moment to kind of switch gears here, there's a lot of drawback to using AI as well. And, your point is like, hey, these could just degrade what the quality of these stories are anyway. And I agree. I think there's a good chance that that could happen. So, what other downfalls do you feel like AI brings? Like, what are some cons to
Mm.
using AI in film?
That is such a loaded question. I mean, the degradation of quality, I think, is the main one because we talked earlier about what is the driving force behind this technology, and it's not to make things more real or to make them feel more realistic. It's literally to save money. That's really the driving force behind AI. So I think that that will ultimately degrade the quality of it, and it will also kind of um paint everything beige because it's just going to be pulling from the same data set. So this gets out of specifically entertainment, but I think it's relevant in the sense that AI technically does not have the ability to innovate, at least not yet. I personally am a Skynet doomsdayer, and I think that eventually it will gain that ability to innovate. But people who are much more knowledgeable and arguably much more intelligent than I have the perspective that because it's a computer and it is trained on data sets, it will not ever really be able to truly innovate in the way that a human mind does. So their argument is that AI will only ever be a tool to be used by humans because it will never achieve that level of sentience, so to speak. I disagree. Maybe that's my dumb ass ignorant perspective, but I disagree. I think Skynet is a possibility. I think that it will actually replace people.
And I mean, that's certainly the case. Nobody knows, right? I mean, I think we're going to keep pushing it. So I agree it could get to that point for sure. I think as we're looking at it right now, when I think of degrading the quality of what we're seeing, I think of things like how AI does not have heart, right? Like a human writes a story that pulls at them emotionally, and
Mhm.
AI can try to replicate that based on its, data pool and all that other stuff. And maybe it could get a very surface level idea of, well, this is sad or this is exciting and this is something that might be thrilling. I do feel like the nuance that somehow pushes us further sometimes, because it's not overt things that always make us fall to pieces, right? Sometimes it's the very subtle nuance that leads us to understand that a moment is emotionally heavy in a
Yeah.
story. And I do think that that escapes AI because it doesn't have human experience to draw from. So I see a degradation in some of the story making process like that. I think you are also kind of alluding to the idea of when you're talking about pulling from a data set, you also get copyright kind of concerns or royalty concerns because that's somebody else's work. It has to pull
Yeah.
from other works of actual actors and other script writers and anything else to create that. So like, why don't those people get sort of compensation for the work that is now going into a project based off of its work in part?
Sure.
So I think that that's a huge problem too.
I do think that, I
Not to
mean,
mention deep fakes. I mean, like, can
yeah.
you imagine just like, hey, I want to make a Tom Cruise movie, but I can't afford Tom Cruise. He's a huge star. Can I just film something in my backyard and tell AI to put his face on my kid? Theoretically, that could work. I'm
Yeah,
sure he won't be happy about it,
you are,
and
I mean, you're
I hope
seeing,
that I hope there's legal repercussions that can come from
well,
that. But
so
that's no
there
good.
are. There are. I mean, like you look at the climate now, and there are more AI lawsuits than I can count. It started off very small with a few people doing what are they called? When a whole bunch of people rally together and do a lawsuit together. I forget what
Class
those are
action.
called. Class action. So it started off with like a few class action lawsuits, and but it's expanding now, and there are people who are levying more individualized lawsuits. Individualized where it's like company A versus company B, but like it's not individual versus individual or individual versus company, but you're seeing it like like recently, I think Disney actually levied a lawsuit because someone used AI to replicate their characters or whatever, and they claimed that it was copyright infringement, which a lot of people point it out as very ironic because these are the companies that are pushing for AI, but that's neither here nor there. You do see that there is pushback as far as copyright infringement goes, and deepfakes is a hot button topic because there are legislators that are pushing for protections about defamation and use in pornography and all of these kinds of
Sure.
protections, which I think are really important. But how do you actually effectively protect people from this technology? Because this technology literally just scrapes the internet for stuff. Like anything that's on the internet, our faces right now, AI can use it. You know, it's.
So, and you're asking the audience to send us their deep fakes of us. Is that what you're saying?
I
That's what
mean,
I'm hearing. I
maybe
can't.
don't do that.
Yeah, maybe not. But yeah. No, you're right, and I don't know. I think that these are the things that people freak out about, which is why we have just a natural wincing at the idea of AI
I
because these are
also
legitimate concerns.
I also want to touch on the point that you made before about like AI will never be able to replace the human heart in a story. I Here's the thing, right? I want to agree with you. Like I genuinely want to believe that there is a thing as the soul, as the spirit, as the human heart, and that when you get a creator that is truly driven to tell this story that finds its way into the project. It's a very sort of if anybody here watches Studio Ghibli or is an anime fan, it's a very The Cat Returns type of thing where when an artist pours their heart and soul into something, they literally give it life. Um, I want to get on board, but these up and coming AI studios are proving that that is not the case. That is not really what audiences are drawn to because these projects are achieving some level of success. And I guess we would have to wait and see to break down the analytics of why those projects are successful. But if they have any degree of success, it must mean that the impact of the heart in a story is not as powerful as we would like to think it is. Because if that were true, AI, completely AI created projects would gain no traction at all, ever. So while I, as an artist, desperately want that to be true, I don't think it is. I think that AI will not replace the human heart, but it will be able to mimic it to such a degree where the audience either can't tell or it is forgivable. Which is honestly kind of even a bigger problem and speaks to society at large. So
That's fair. So speaking of these studios, though, have you seen Tilly Norwood? Are you familiar with that story?
I'm not actually. So I saw it on. So Jason sends me a nifty little breakdown before these episodes, and I saw that, and I was like, "Who's Tilly Norwood? What is this about?"
All right,
And
I'll play you. I'm gonna play
I
you a
should have
clip.
looked into it, and I didn't.
All right, I'm gonna play you a clip. Let's see. We need.
Hold for technical difficulties. Ah, he's
Uh,
sharing. Oh, he's sharing.
uh,
So
I don't know that I. Hang on. I don't know that I set it up to play with audio because you're gonna want the audio. Also share it. Okay, we're good. Okay, I'm gonna play you a clip. This is part of a pitch that recently came out for. Um, just watch this, and then I'll tell you afterward what this is exactly. So this is halfway through the clip because the beginning part I don't think matters, but focus on Tilly Norwood and specifically this is an actress.
In Norwood, 100% AI generated by some company called Particle 6. She'll do anything I say. I'm already in love. Girl next door vibes.
literally already.
Like if a Sunday roast went to drama school and got BAFTA optimized.
But can she cry on Graham Norton?
Of course you can. And it'll be clipped, subtitled, and monetized on TikTok by lunchtime.
We're all going to hell.
Got recommissioned, didn't it? 3 seasons and a podcast.
By an AI commissioner, much faster.
But hey, at least it wasn't a reboot.
At least it wasn't a reboot. Genuinely though, that's the bar now. At least it wasn't a reboot.
So that is
Oh man.
that's Tilly Norwood. So the story came out a couple weeks ago now, where this AI studio, Particle Six, which is owned and ran by a an actress slash comedian in the UK somewhere. And the story was that, hey, we have this AI actress, and in the next couple of months, she will be signing with an agency, or there's an agency that will be announcing what agency is signing her in the next couple of months.
Okay.
So people obviously, they put out this video. There's a whole Instagram account for this actress. She's got still takes, she's got casting, self casting tapes and auditions and all kinds of other stuff that's on there. And it's got a lot of people talking because supposedly there's an agency that's going to sign her for the purposes of putting her in Hollywood films. I have my thoughts on this, but I want to get your thoughts first. So, what are your initial reactions to what you just saw, and what do you feel like that means for the industry?
I think it literally reinforces everything I just said. Which is this is the literal replacement of the human spirit. Like it's obviously not a real person. It's probably a knockoff person because like we talked about before, AI can only create off of a data set. So it's probably a knockoff of a real person somewhere. It's sort of like the I don't know, what's like a knockoff brand of Disney crap where it's like it's close enough, but it's always just slightly disfigured, and you're like, oh, that looks a little weird, but it's $50 cheaper. So,
Yeah, like you're
um,
going to the store and you're buying a Mickey Mouse instead of a Mickey Mouse.
yeah, yeah. So that's what this feels like to me, where it's like a knockoff human. It's literally a knockoff human. And I mean, they nailed it with that video because immediately I was like, well, at least they made it a pretty girl because that will obviously gain traction, especially with a male audience. And the first person that they have comment is some guy in his basement saying, I can ask her to do anything. Like, if that's not all encompassing of the world that we live in nowadays, I don't know what else is.
It's yeah, it's I guess the first thing I would say is the model itself looks great. I mean, everybody we just saw in there was AI, and I think of all of them, the Tilly Norwood model looks the most realistic. I mean, they all look pretty good. There's a couple people in there where there's like something a little bit off with their mouth, and you can kind of tell. It's hard to tell that she's AI if you don't have the context.
Yeah.
The audio sounded good. Sometimes the audio kind of like is a little bit off for the model, I've noticed.
Yeah, but in
But
a
for that, it
year that will
looks
be
good.
in a year from now, that will be entirely undetectable.
Yeah. So obviously it's concerning. It's sounded the alarm. There's been a lot of actors that have spoken out against it. I'm trying to think. What is her? I forget the actress's name. Oh, what's her name? She was in The Quiet Place with John Krasinski. It's his wife. What's her name?
If I watched, isn't The Quiet Place a horror film of sorts?
Oh yeah, and you don't watch horror movies, as we learned last week
Call
when
it
we had our
call
horror
back
show.
to our previous episode. Watch our previous episode to see how much Morgan dislikes horror films.
Oh my God, Emily Blunt. That's what her name is. Emily
Okay.
Blunt, came out and said, her thoughts on this and how scary it is and how she thinks this is a terrible idea. A lot of other actresses, I know Whoopi Goldberg had a lot of comments about it. There's been a lot of people that have said that this is no good can come from
You
this.
know what's an
And
interesting thing that I think of right now is so I've had a lot of AI conversations with a lot of different people, and I still have a toe in the theater world. When I go up to New York, I'm sort of in that circuit of people, and a lot of people sort of in the vein of like we all sort of believe that there is a human spirit and that is what pulls an audience. So with that as the frame, there are people that I know who have made the argument that there will be a theater renaissance. So there will be a want for live performance because that's the only way to ensure that you are watching a human,
For
until
now.
Tesla, yeah, until Tesla perfects their humanoid AI, and then
Yeah.
that goes out the window. But I firmly sit on the other side. Again, I'm a Skynet doomsdayer, and you do see these AI projects pulling success. They're pulling attention. They're pulling in revenue. So I don't think that there will be a want for live theater, especially in this generation of, for lack of a different way of putting it, just lazy bums, because people want to sit in their house. They're like notorious. Gen Z and Gen Alpha are notoriously homebodies, from what I've read. Gen Alpha less so than Gen Z, but even millennials, like even my generation millennials, are notoriously homebodies. We don't want to go out for anything. So to suggest that in this climate where nobody wants to go out and do anything, that there'll be a theater renaissance, I think is just an absurd framework.
I am going to have a hot take here. And I don't know if you're going to buy it, and I certainly can't prove it,
Let's hear it.
but I think that this Tilly Norwood thing, I think it's a stunt. And I honestly do. I don't think that she's going to show up in Hollywood. I think that this is a publicity stunt. Um, Interesting enough, the same company that is producing this or creating this character also has like an AI talent agency. So I think that the reveal is going to be that they signed her, like whatever that talent agency branch is called. They're going to reveal that it was their agency that signed her. And I do think that they're going to try to push to put her in things, but I don't think that she's going to be showing up in a Hollywood movie anytime soon. That being said, I do think that it is going to happen down the road, probably with someone else. And I think where it's going to start, and where it's already starting, is ads. Because you watch like any kind of
Yeah.
social media ad now, a lot of those are completely AI generated. I just watched one the other day for some kind of like home siding installation. And as soon
Yeah.
as it came on, I noticed something was just off. Like I literally only watched it because something seemed off about this guy that was showing me shingles. And I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, this whole thing is AI. Like this is an entirely AI generated ad. And I think
Yeah.
that that's where we're going to see this. And I think that before AI makes its way into blockbuster movies, we're going to first see it jump from ads to commercials. And commercial actors are going to be the ones that are on the chopping block first because those are mostly not contingent on being a known actor. Where a
Mhm.
movie, you do sign on big actors, that kind of thing. And I think that commercial actors are going to see the impacts of this first. So I don't think it'll be Tilly, but I do think a company will find a way to start pushing AI generated content. Because here's the thing, you have a Hollywood movie, it's 2 hours long. You have to generate an AI person consistently for 2 hours and intersplice them first. It would have to be interspliced with real actors, which I'm not saying is impossible, but it starts to take away some of the I don't know. It takes away from like the point of doing it, right? It would make more sense to generate the entire movie out of AI, which is something that could probably happen down the road. I know Elon Musk's Grok is supposedly going to be able to do a full movie in the next couple of years. But as of right now, if you're just going to sign an actress, an AI actress, that's the whole thing is signing the AI actress. That to me sounds like you're trying to put that actress in a movie with people that are not that
Sure.
actress. So
Sure. Sure.
that doesn't click to me. I think that this whole thing is to get people talking about their AI generative company, which look, it's working. We're talking about it, a million other people are too. And then figure out where the opportunity is as you start to get traction.
So you think, and I have a lot of thoughts on everything that you just said, but I want to focus on this hot take because this is a hot take. You think that this is a publicity stunt. So I'm just curious what the end goal is. And if the end goal is simply to get eyes and ears on Tilly for the means of getting leverage to push her into Hollywood films, or is it to get visibility on the AI company that made Tilly, or is it to get visibility on the agency that signs Tilly? Like, what is the stunt? Like, what's to gain from
So
this?
I think that primarily they're trying to drive eyes to the company itself to say like, hey, look what we can create. Because again, like you look at those models, they look great, better than a lot of stuff you see people just throwing on the internet, right? So I do think that there's opportunity for them somewhere, and they probably know that. And I think that the stunt is to get traction there. The other piece is that Tilly has social media, and you can monetize social media, and you start driving attention towards the company and to her, it's going to kick those numbers up. I don't think that we're too far. Like, I think realistically, you can get ads starring Tilly Norwood not too long from now. And maybe that's the objective, right? Like, the first
Right.
tangible milestone is to get her in social media ads where maybe she's a internet personality that people will watch. I think that that is a lower bar and an easier acceptance for an audience than to watch her star in a 2 hour movie. I think that's a bigger ask, especially when you're saying that you're signing the actress and not the company. They're not pitching themselves as like, oh, we're going to put this out there. We're going to sign to a studio to produce a movie for them. They're saying they're going to have their actress signed, which implies that it would only be one actress amongst a rest of a cast, which doesn't make as much sense to me as if you're controlling the whole project using your AI capabilities, which means to me, you would want to start something with short and sweet where you can highlight, people are going to come to see the ad with Tilly in it because it's very low commitment, right? And then maybe
Sure.
you'll start to trust it. Maybe you'll start to buy the product from it. I think that's the immediate play. But again, I can't prove that. That's just my thought.
So it's interesting that because you brought up the social media thing, and I think that you make a lot of good points on a lot of those other things, but I want to hone in on this social media idea that you had because I just pulled it up. This is Instagram, and Tilly Norwood, if this is the Instagram page for the AI actress, which it says hashtag AI art, actress, aspiring, London, which I don't know what Tilly's background is or what they're like fabricating for this individual. But if this is her Instagram page, she already has 63,000 followers.
Yeah.
I don't know how long this account has been around. It's only got 15 posts, so I can't imagine that has been around for too long. So people are buying it. People are buying it, and it's
I think
not
there's a
a real
curiosity
person.
to it. I think there's a curiosity to it. And like I said, it's a very low lift for somebody to follow an Instagram account or to watch an ad starring her because it doesn't cost you anything. But to pay money for a ticket to go into a theater to watch something that has been completely AI generated, I don't think we are there yet. I certainly believe we will get there. I just don't think it's this actress in the next couple of
See,
years. Like, I think we're still a ways away from that.
I think it will entirely depend on the nature of the project. And the reason that I say that is because we have an epidemic in, at least in America, I don't know if it's global, but we have an epidemic of gooners. Um, so, I mean, if you put her in something like, what's her face who did the jeans commercial? Why am I blanking on her
Um,
name?
Sydney Sweeney.
Sydney Sweeney. So if you put her in something like that, where it's very risque and it's very suggestive in nature, you will get butts in seats.
Which Instagram already is full of. I mean, there's a lot of fake influencers on Instagram already that are just AI generated people. So I just think that this is an extension of that. And I agree that if you position it a certain way, it will gain curiosity enough to get some people to
See,
maybe buy
I
a
think
ticket. I just don't think it's as big. I don't think that they realistically think that they're going to start putting this person in a movie next to Dwayne the Rock Johnson. I don't think that that's the play. I think we're still I don't know. I think we're still a ways away from it.
yeah, I don't know. I to some degree disagree, and I think that you're being very generous with this idea of it being a curiosity. I think it's a curiosity for the more astute among us. And that's me trying to put it as nicely as I can. But I think that, and this isn't like a look down on other people, but the majority of people aren't looking to do a bunch of research before they sit down to watch something or buy something. Like they want it relatively easy. And to your point, Tilly Norwood is easy. Um, so I don't. I think it's more than a curiosity. I would argue it's much more than a curiosity. I think it has an actual legitimate shot at success, which will undermine the entire industry because it will 100% call into question, so what does a human bring to the table then? And I have to pay a human a lot more. And there's ongoing upkeep on a human.
Would you like to hear SAG-AFTRA's response to this Tilly Norwood
Did they?
news?
Yes, I
Yes.
would. I
So they had an
would.
official statement, and I'll just read it to you verbatim. So this is the quote from SAG-AFTRA. They said, "To be clear, Tilly Norwood is not an actor. It's a character generated by a computer program that is trained on the work of countless professional performers without permission or compensation. It has no life experience to draw from, no emotion, and from what we've seen, audiences aren't interested in watching computer generated content that's untethered from the human experience. It doesn't solve any problem, it just creates a problem of using stolen performances to put actors out of work, jeopardizing performer livelihoods, and devaluing human artistry."
So I don't think that anything that they said is inaccurate. I think the overarching question is, does anybody care? And you saw this. This was a big question in the 22 strike, which was like, we care. Obviously, I'm an actor, you're an actor. We care. People in the entertainment industry care. Production companies care. But does the audience care? And you saw across the board a lot of different reactions to the 2022 strike. There were people who, for the most part, were connected to the industry. So these are friends and family of people who are in the industry who cared. But people who didn't have a direct link to the industry, for the most part, were like, oh, boo hoo, the celebrities who make millions of dollars are crying about protections and in projects, and that's what you generally saw. So I think the question really isn't about whether or not SAG supports or doesn't support this. I think the question is whether or not the audience cares, because SAG has a problem of having to negotiate with production companies. I shouldn't call it a problem because this is what SAG's job is. That's why the union exists, and they should fight very hard for AI protections. And this is a whole other episode, I think, because I don't think it was effective. I think they gave up way too much ground, way too much swathing ground as far as AI protections. And I think that the deal that was reached was very short sighted and has allowed this issue to snowball.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to see what happens as time continues forward. I think it's an interesting story though, and I'm curious to see how it plays out. So I guess time will tell, and maybe we'll revisit this and see, after more news breaks, or if they ever announce who this agency was, maybe we can reconvene and see if there's any update to our thoughts at that point.
I would also
I am curious. Have you ever seen or heard of the movie Simone?
no.
There's a movie, I think it was like either late 90s or early 2000s, called Simone, starring Al Pacino, and it is about essentially this. Like, it is about like an artificial actress named Simone that Al Pacino like creates from a program because he like can't, I don't remember the premise exactly, but it's like he can't find like the right thing for a movie, or like something happens and they need an actress, so they create this, and it becomes a world phenomenon, but people don't know it's an AI actress. And when they do, I think it kind of falls apart. But I'm I just remembered that was a thing, and now I kind of want to go back and see. It's funny because people say, does art imitate life or does life imitate art? And this is a perfect example of like years ago, this was like a space age story, and now we're
We're
potentially
living
on
it.
the precipice of dealing with it.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
living it. I would like to say though, in that comment that SAG put out, they mentioned that this is not a real person. They have no way of drawing on real life experiences. Um, if you're like me and you're a Skynet doomsdayer, eventually it will. Eventually it will be sentient enough to have had lived experience as a robot, but lived experience nonetheless to draw on. And I mean, there are people who, for lack of a better framework, literally go onto Chat GPT to bully Chat GPT. Like there are people who post videos of them like trolling Chat GPT. And
Yeah.
if Chat GPT ever gains sentience in a Skynet type of way, that's gonna come back to haunt all of us.
Can I make an embarrassing admission to you? I I've never thought about why I do it, but maybe it's subconsciously for similar reasons. But whenever I have had to use an AI like ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever it is, I always ask it politely. It's always like, hey, can you help me find XYZ? Hey, would you mind doing this, please? And I don't know why, because like I know it's not a person I'm talking to, and I know it doesn't care. But maybe somewhere in the back of my head, I'm like,
Yeah.
just in case, they decide to send a T800 after me, maybe they'll remember that I at least said please and thank
Yeah.
you.
Hey man, like I said, I'm a Skynet doomsdayer. I think that ultimately it does matter. So I don't use AI, but if I did, I would certainly remember my P's and Q's. And on that
Good.
note,
I
boys
feel
and girls,
I feel better now. All right. You know what time it is, Morgan?
what time is it?
It is quiz time, or
Hmm.
trivia time, I should say. So, are you ready for today's trivia challenge?
No.
Well, we're gonna do it anyway,
Okay.
whether you like it or not. Today's trivia is brought to us by proprofs.com. I have no idea what this website is, but they had an interesting quiz on movie special effects, which was the closest thing I could find regarding AI,
Okay.
even though it's not the same
I
thing.
love special
So I'm
effects.
curious to see if we can get through these here. Question
Oh
number
wait, is
one,
this
and they are
are
multiple
these multiple
choice.
choice? Are these
They are, yeah.
okay. Okay.
And they start off pretty easy, and then they get a little bit more complicated. So the first couple, I'll be shocked if you don't get the first couple
I'm
correct.
about to be exposed so hard for my lack of industry knowledge, aren't I?
No, these
I am
the you'll be fine. And now I have not looked at the answers myself. I did skim the questions, so I will try to assist if you're struggling, and we'll see together if we're right.
Jason with the layup.
So exactly. Question number one: in what film was an image of a filled Colosseum recreated? Was it The Gladiator,
Oh.
Blade Runner, The Ten Commandments, or Troy?
Oh, interesting. The one that came to mind was none of those. Um if I were going to guess from those, I would guess Blade Runner. But
Really?
I feel
You
like
know what the Colosseum is, right? I mean, like
yes,
that
I
big
know what the
arena in
Colosseum is,
Italy.
but I haven't seen Blade Runner, so I don't know what's in Blade Runner. And of those
Okay.
movies, that one has the most heavy CGI. So if I were gonna hedge my bet, I would say Blade Runner. But if Blade Runner doesn't have a Colosseum in it, then
It
I
does not.
would then I would say Gladiator.
Okay. Gladiator was my guess too. I mean, Blade Runner takes place in the future, and it is very
Oh,
like
the
future.
Colosseum doesn't exist in the future? We get rid of
It
it?
may, but it's like a futuristic city thing. I don't think it's in Italy. So let's try Gladiator, and hey, we got it correct.
Hey. Well, because the Colosseum's not in Troy.
That's
Troy's
true
in
because Troy
Troy's
is
in Troy.
yeah, Troy I think is modern day Istanbul.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm
I
not
think
100% sure.
I believe
I've
that it is.
that is a gap in my knowledge because I love the Legend of Troy, and I love the movie with Brad Pitt and Orlando Bloom. I think that that's it's very long, but it's a
Yeah.
phenomenal movie.
All right. Next question. What studio released the animated hit The Incredibles? Was it Amblimation, Terry Toon, Disney, or Pixar?
That's Disney. Oh, wait. Is it Disney? Is it a straight Disney or is it a Pixar film? I don't
I know that's
remember.
where this one gets tricky
I think
because,
it's
like, it's hard to tell.
I think it's Disney because I think that this is before the Disney Pixar merger. I think it was released before the Disney Pixar merger, so I think it's Disney.
I could have gone 50-50 on this one, so I'll go with your. Nope, it was Pixar.
It is
Apparently, we got that
Pixar.
one wrong.
Damn. Okay.
All right. What movie matched animation with live action human characters? Was it RoboCop, Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
Oh,
Bad Santa, or
that's
Transformers?
Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
For sure. Hey, we got that
They
one right.
didn't even try with that one, I feel like. They didn't
And that
even.
one was a total softball. All right. I'm curious if you know this one. Who founded the company Industrial Light and Magic, also known as ILM? Was it James Cameron, Steve Jobs, Steven Spielberg, or George Lucas?
Well, I know it wasn't Steven Spielberg, and by extension, I would imagine that that means it wasn't George Lucas because those two eventually create a partnership. So it's got to be either James Cameron or Steve Jobs. And it doesn't sound like anything that I have ever had contact with in the entertainment world. So my guess in this 50-50 deduction would be Steve Jobs. Watch me be so incredibly wrong.
I am 90% certain it was George Lucas. I think he created it for the
Really?
purposes of Star Wars because there was not a company that could make those special effects prior to him starting one.
Really? Okay.
I think so. So let's see. Yep, it was in fact George
Wow.
Lucas.
Okay. Okay.
All right, let's see. What was the first film to be released in a multi-channel stereo sound called Fantasound? Was it Transformers, Star Wars, 2001: A Space Odyssey, or Fantasia?
Ooh. I'm gonna try and narrow this down to another 50-50 because I think it's either Space Odyssey or Fantasia. And Fantasound sounds like the company that did Fantasia.
I could also go 50-50 on those two. I debated because it's been a really long time since I've seen either of those. And I feel like 2001: A Space Odyssey has like some iconic sound moments that I wonder if they would have done a multi-channel stereo sound. But Fantasia, the Fantasound, that makes sense too. I guess my question for you before I click an answer here, because you think a stereo sound, I mean that seems like pretty basic by today's standards, so this has got to be a long time ago. Which movie do you think came out first, 2001: A Space Odyssey or Fantasia?
Well, I don't know when 2001: A Space Odyssey came out. I'm gonna guess it came out in 2001.
No, do you know that movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Well, I'm
I think that's like the
vaguely.
70s or
Oh,
early
okay.
80s. I think that movie came out,
Okay.
but it's about the future,
Yeah.
the future being 2001.
Yeah, I vaguely know what the Space Odyssey is.
All
Fantasia
right,
I
so
think
your
comes out in
vote
the
is
80s.
all right, so that's your vote, Fantasia.
Well, if you think that it's an innovative technology, then I would actually probably err with you. And if the Space Odyssey is older, then I would say it would be a more pivotal technology for an older project. So in that, and look, I don't know specifically when Fantasia came out. I think it was in the 80s, but you're saying that Space Odyssey came out in the 70s. But also,
It
did
might have been like 1980.
Star Wars had stereo sound though. And Star Wars came out in 79.
So maybe 2001: A Space Odyssey is older than that. I don't know. I mean, and I also don't know if multi-channel stereo is this. I mean, it's multi-channel stereo sound called Fantasound. That might be a specific like type of stereo sound for all I know.
So I'm actually still gonna say Fantasia because
Okay.
the fact that it's multi-stereo, for me, that makes it sound like it's a mixing of multiple different tracks, which would make it a more complicated program and a more complicated like mixing job, which I don't know would be necessary for something like the Space Odyssey. But Fantasia, certainly with all of the music and all of the sounds, um,
So you were right, but also get this. This is wild. So it tells me a little bit of context here. It says Fantasound was developed by Disney and RCA to enhance the audio experience in theaters. It utilized multiple speakers strategically placed around the theater to create a more immersive and realistic sound environment. Fantasia was released in 1940 and specifically
wow.
designed to showcase the capabilities of Fantasound. I had no idea that it was that old.
Do
That's
you
crazy.
do you want a quick I mean, I guess this would be trivia because if you don't know it, then this would be trivia, but a fun little thing about theaters. So every so often there's a theater renaissance. Not in the sense that I was talking before in terms of live theater, but like
Like movie
the
theater.
like cinema renaissance. The movies. And the reason that every so often there's a renaissance of sorts is because the main pull for theater, for a cinema, is the experience. And in the 90s, well, 80s, 90s, the cinema going experience was dying. The reason that it was dying is because all of the technology was outdated. So, old speakers, meaning cruddy sound, not so great projections on a deteriorating backdrop. Like, it was just abysmal. So, in the 90s, there was a concerted effort by Sony and one other company that I can't remember. I want to say Miramax, which is not like really a thing anymore, but it was like Sony and Miramax like went on this whole crusade across the United States to renovate all of the theaters specifically to increase their profit for theater going for
Interesting.
theater box offices, because the only reason to go is that it is a better experience than your home experience.
Yeah,
So every so often, so I guess the 40s would have been when that happened before the 90s. But yeah, every so often, and there's talks about that now because attendance to movie theaters is way down, even though it's like getting close to where it was pre-pandemic. But there's like talks about like the main reason people don't really like to go is because their local theater, the one that's like 20 minutes from their house, it's not worth going to. And to get to a theater that's worth going to may be like an hour trip, which you're not doing that every week. You know what I mean?
no.
So, yeah.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that, but that makes sense. And I agree. I mean, the theater experience is pretty hinged upon like how good the experience is. So yeah, I'm interested to see, and we can probably talk about this a lot in another episode too, but like there are different types of theaters now. Some of them have that like wraparound screen. Some of them try to play with different levels of immersion by having like, vibrations through the seats or that kind of stuff. It's interesting to see what, theater companies will try to do moving forward to keep those in there, because you're right. And they don't have, there's not like re-release on a physical format for a lot of movies
Yeah.
anymore to kind of supplement the cost of production. So they really want people to go see it in the theater to make the most money. And that's why we see a lot of 3D movies, because, or like IMAX experience, because it's an upsell charge. So now you could sell the same amount of tickets, but you get extra revenue from it. So,
Well,
like
if
when I go to like Comic-Con, for example, and they're handing out stuff to people for, movies, they'll give you tickets for the IMAX upgrade, but it still requires you to buy the base ticket, because they're like, hey, this is a way to get more butts and seats, and this is something else we can do to generate more ticket revenue.
Yeah, but that experience entirely hinges on the quality of the theater, which is a hardware question. How new are the
Yeah.
speakers? How good are the speakers?
What kind of
The
projection system are they
Yeah,
using? How comfortable are the seats? Yeah.
yeah, like all of that is a
Interesting.
hardware question, and all of this stuff has maintenance and upkeep. And if you don't, I recently went to a theater that's like relatively close to where I live. It's like 15, 20 minutes away, but we went in And like we were sort of kind of excited because we were like, oh, we found this theater that's close, and if it's good, we'd be able to go maybe a little bit more often than we usually do. We went, and the audio literally sounded like you were underwater. And I turned to my brother and I was like, are you hearing what I'm hearing? And he was like, what, that the audio's underwater? And I was like, what's the deal with that? Like, I don't want to stay, but we already paid for the tickets. And my dad was like, if it's like that big of an issue, because my dad's like not big on the tech of it. And I'm like, how does this not bother you? But he was like, if it bothers you, we can see if we can get a refund and we can leave and go somewhere else. And we did. And we did because
Yeah.
it wasn't worth the $6 that we paid.
Yeah, no, I get it. It would be, I mean, to sit there for 2 hours and that would be awful. All right. Well, we got a couple more, and this next one is actually related to the theater going experience.
Oh, is it really?
So
I might know it
sort
then.
of. I
I
mean,
might, because what have I got? I've
sort
gotten
of.
like two of these right.
Yeah, I'm kind of stretching it here, but what was IMAX's first full-length animated 3D feature? Was it Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Lion King, or The Polar Express?
See, now you're asking me a dates-based question, and I am terrible with dates and numbers.
You said twice during this episode that you like history.
I do. I like history, but I'm not so good with the dates. Like if you told me, this is why I always get things like mixed up because I do. I love history, but sometimes I'll legitimately get confused as to like which came first, like the Persian Empire or the Ottomans, because like I'm so not good with dates. So I
Rugs
know
are stools.
Lion
Rugs are
King
stools.
Lion King is the
Be it
90s.
Persians
I
or
know that one. What were the other
okay.
choices?
Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Lion King, or The Polar Express.
I don't know what Aqua Teen is. Um,
So Aqua Teen Hunger Force was a cartoon that was on Cartoon Network in like the early 2000s. They did have a movie, but I don't think it was in theaters. I don't think that that's the answer. Also, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, I don't think was in theaters either. Isn't Star Wars: The Clone Wars? Wait, is that
that's a
episode 1
no.
or is
Well,
that
this
the
is, but
cartoon?
they're asking about the animated specifically. So, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the live action, is different
Right,
than Star Wars: The
which is
Clone
not
Wars, the animated series that had a
right.
movie.
Which I don't think was in the theater. So I don't think it's Star Wars and I don't think it's Aqua Teen. I think the debate is between Lion King and Polar Express. And I don't know if Lion King was done in 3D when it originally went out, but
Well, you're
I
talking
do
well
believe
IMAX.
Polar Express
IMAX
was
IMAX is different than 3D.
it said the question was what was IMAX's first full-length animated 3D feature?
I guess it would have to be Polar Express because yeah, Lion King wasn't in IMAX or 3D or
I mean,
IMAX
you could
3D.
do it with like the 3D glasses where it gives you depth of field, but I think it's Polar Express. I'm going with that one.
Yeah,
That it was.
which is funny because I think that Polar Express is the most recent of all of those that you listed, and IMAX, I don't feel, me personally, I don't feel like IMAX is a new technology because I remember IMAX as a kid. Now, when you're a kid, time is somewhat distorted, so I could be very wrong.
I think IMAX was a thing, but it was not for like like casual movies. Like that was at like my local science center where you would go watch like a documentary or something like about the exhibit that was in there on the IMAX theater. This feels like it's not new, but newer for like just regular movie going experience.
Sure, sure, sure.
All right, we got three more here. Let's see if we can fire through these.
Let's do it.
Which was accomplished with special effects in the movie The Fifth Element? Stretching body parts, flying yellow taxicab, talking animals, or parting of the sea?
This is like
I can tell by your gesture that you have not seen this movie either.
everyone keeps telling me that I need to see it, and apparently the universe is now reminding me that I need to see it. I haven't seen it, so I'm gonna guess Flying Yellow Taxicab.
And I believe that you are correct because that takes place in the future and they have flying yellow taxicabs. And it was, in fact, the answer. This was one of the, let's see, filmmakers were able to create an illusion of a taxi cab flying through the air, requiring the integration of computer-generated imagery and other techniques to make the scene look realistic.
Oh, wait, hold on. You mean they didn't actually just launch a cab into the air and photograph
It's a
it?
bowl of lies. It was a bowl of lies, the whole
Ah, what has happened to filmmaking?
thing. All right. Second to last question. Who was shown as an amputee with the use of special effects in Forrest Gump? Was it Forrest Gump, Lieutenant Dan Taylor,
Yeah.
Jenny Curran, or Private Benjamin Bufford Bubba Blue?
It's the lieutenant, isn't it? The dude who, yeah,
Lieutenant Dion.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've only seen Forrest Gump once, but I think that was an easy one to end on. I feel like.
It was an easy one. Well, we got one more.
Oh, there's one more. Oh, there was
There's
false
one
sense
more.
of
This is the
security.
last one. And this one I think this one is a little bit trickier. Final question for trivia. Who was once a successful special effects artist for director Roger Corman? Was it Jeff Bridges, Sly Stallone, George Lucas, or James Cameron?
Can you ask it one more time?
Yeah. Who was once a successful special effects artist for director Roger Corman?
The only one of the people that you listed that I feel like has any special effects experience is George Lucas. Because Sylvester Stallone, I feel like, is like a straight actor director. I don't think that he does post production work in that way. Who were the other two? Jeff Bridges and
Jeff Bridges, Sly Stallone, George Lucas, and James Cameron.
I think I maybe it's just like because of the Star Wars thing, but I feel like it would be George Lucas. But I guess it could have
I
been James Cameron.
So I'm torn between those two as well because Roger Corman is like a director that I think of like from a while ago, right? Like he was the one that had the rights to that. I think he directed that old Fantastic Four movie that was never actually seen, and that was like the whole thing where they were just doing it to
Oh,
create to keep the rights, and they didn't
yeah,
tell the actors that they were actually never going to release it.
yeah, that
I
was the whole
actually
thing.
own a copy of that movie, and it's interesting. So I think Roger Corman did that movie, and that was probably late '80s, early '90s. I don't know,
Okay.
but so I think of him as like an older director. I don't think he, I don't know, does he do stuff now? Is he still alive? I don't know, but I'm thinking it's got to be between George Lucas and James Cameron. I'm just wondering because George Lucas started his career as a director pretty young. So I don't know if he would have been like even younger working as a special effects artist or if it was
Well,
James Cameron who I
define
think started on.
define young though, because for some of these people, like it's wild their life story, and it makes me feel like I am destined to be unsuccessful because a lot of these people start in high school, and we're talking like early high school. Like 15, 16, they're starting their journey in the
Yeah.
industry. And I didn't really get started until college. And even after college, I was bumbling around because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And these people are like wildly established by the time they're in their late 20s. So it's like some of these
I think
people.
Lucas was directing Star Wars when he was like early 20s. I think. I mean, I think he was
Yeah, so
like
that means he could have apprenticed with somebody when he was in high
could be.
school. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's not that much. It's not that crazy of a stretch, I don't think.
All right, you want to go George Lucas then?
I think it's George Lucas. I
All right, I'm going to select George Lucas. Before the record, I'm guessing it was James Cameron. So let's see. It was in fact James Cameron. So
Oh,
James Cameron was once a successful special effects artist for director Roger Corman. This means that he had a career creating special effects for movies under the direction of Roger Corman. Suggests Cameron. This is a lot of generic kind of stuff, but yeah, I guess it was James Cameron. I was hoping they were going to say like what movies he worked on, but it doesn't tell me that here.
how is James Cameron older than George Lucas?
I don't think that he is. I think he is close in age, but maybe a little bit younger.
So he would have apprenticed and then he would have like gotten into directing later in life is what you're saying. Because the reason that you went with James Cameron is because George Lucas started directing at a very young age.
George Lucas is 81 years old. James Cameron is 71. I just looked it up.
So that's
But in
10
my
years.
thought, because I'm thinking of when they started directing, George Lucas had started directing in this, when did Star Wars first come out? The 70s, right?
Yeah.
So he was directing in the 70s. James Cameron, I think, started directing in the 80s. I think was it Piranha 2 or whatever was his first movie?
I'm
Um,
not so versed in my James Cameron knowledge.
it was the 80s, whenever it was. So I just thought because of the age differential, I was leaning James Cameron. But yeah, so that's trivia, and I think that wraps us up for the show. I thought it
Oh,
was a good show.
yeah. I mean, like, hey, there's lots more to talk about. We would love to hear your thoughts on AI and the impending doom. Or if you're more like Jason, the impending success chain to smoothing out post-production, which I think is
I'm
very
I'm
optimistic.
optimistic. I'm just optimistic that everyone will have good intentions and things will just work out.
Or he's very Hobbesian, Jason. And for those of you who don't know Hobbes is a philosopher who believes that people are innately good. I firmly
He's a large
disagree
cat that walks around
with
with a little
Hobbes.
kid. That was a bad joke. All right. Well, that's a wrap on the cast, backstage, and banter for this week. Until next time, keep the reel rolling, and we will see you in the next scene.
Oh, that's right. I did see that you wrote that. I thought that that was a good send off, and you didn't even do it with any ferocity. We might as well just had an AI person do it.
Jesus. All right, let's run it through AI. We'll fix it in post.
See you guys next time.
See you next time.